Okay, so I just want to talk about this propaganda campaign that's going on right now that's trying to make black people the scapegoat of this anti-Asian sentiment. Basically, there's this statistic that they're pushing that black people are commit 25% of the anti-Asian attacks. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the logic here. When a brown Latino mugs an Asian person, it's just a mugging. It's just a criminal committing a crime, a mugging. But when a black person mugs an Asian person, it's always anti-Asian or Asian hate crime. That logic doesn't make sense. Then when you look at these stats, they're from 2018. That was intentional. Since this spike of anti-Asian sentiment is mostly stemming from COVID and this whole Kung flu narrative, which mostly stems from the Republican right-wing white cast base, they had to go back 3 years for the stats because it's obvious that a large chunk of these attacks are going to be white cast people. So they had to go back 3 years. And another thing, they're trying to use a little trick. They're saying 25% of anti-Asian attacks against Asian. First of all, when a black person commits crime against Asian, it's not anti-Asian, and that's just criminals committing crimes against U.S. citizens. Okay, yes, black people commit a disproportionate amount of crime, but it's just against citizens. It's not targeting Asians, it's just wealthy people who happen to be Asian, but they frame it as 25% of attacks against Asians are by black people. And then there's this underlying sentiment that it's like black people are genetically thugs, genetically criminals. No, it's just that poor people commit crime, and the people who happen to be mostly poor right now are black people. Okay. If you look at the poorest European countries, they have the highest rate of crime, and those are filled with white cast Europeans, people with European ancestry. So it's just crime. I mean, it's just that poverty dictates crime. And in our country, black people were regulated into poverty. You can even look at redlining where um, black people were intentionally made were put into poverty. Basically, people are complaining about ghetto behavior when they made ghetto people. If you don't want ghetto behavior, stop creating ghettos. But you intentionally create ghettos and you intentionally fill ghettos. You intentionally criminalize black people so they can be stuck in the prison cycle, which would keep them in poverty. And actually, let's do a practical example. Everyone's smoking marijuana right now, but black people are still being arrested for it at several times higher rates. When these black people who were arrested for doing the same thing that other else people were doing, they get records. And when they get records, they can't get jobs. And since they can't get jobs, they have to commit crime to survive. And then they get arrested and then they get worse records. So then you basically have this class of people who are stuck in poverty, and you made that drug war intentionally so you could have prison labor. So you intentionally create ghettos to generate criminals so you can have generate prison labor and prison jobs for your white cast guards and wardens and prison contractors. And then you complain about ghetto behavior. So instead of trying to exploit people based on their appearance so you can have a profit in jobs, why don't you just stop creating ghettos? And that way, you won't be able to distort stats to make it seem like we are the sole people who are committing crimes on Asians because social media is exposing the violence that is coming from white cast people. And yes, do have accountability for crimes against Asians, and we do have some accountability in our poverty, and we do promote the culture in our music. So, yes, we do have accountability, and yes, there's some of us who are committing these anti-Asian crimes, and we some of us target Asians for specifically target Asian for crimes because of there's stereotypes around Asians, and there's a less of an uproar when Asians are attacked, but that is in the minority. Okay, it's white cast people who are committing the most crimes against Asians, and that's what it's been historically.